Disney, holding your nostalgia to ransom for 90 years. So, this is the sort of thing I don't normally talk about. I'm not entirely sure why I feel like talking about it this time, but I don't know, I'm just going to ramble it out. So, some more details about Disney's plans to create its own streaming service and how that is impacting its relationship with Netflix. About a month ago, maybe a little less, we already got the initial announcement that they were planning to do this, and we're going to be taking all of the Disney branded movies, TV shows, etc. off of Netflix once that deal expires, I believe in 2019. What wasn't clear at that point is what was going to happen to other properties owned by Disney, but not necessarily branded as such, namely Star Wars and Marvel. Now, the word was at the time that active negotiations were going on with Netflix so that possibly the service was going to keep them. Well, we found out that's not going to be the case. Star Wars and Marvel are going to be yanked off of Netflix along with everything else and moved over to Disney's, I believe, as yet unnamed streaming service. So my immediate question, which I have not been able, at least at the time of this recording, to get a 100% answer on, is how this is going to impact the current and future state of the Netflix Marvel superhero shows. Because those aren't wholly owned by Disney. Netflix actually co-produces them. So those can't just be yanked away once the deal expires the way other stuff can. So there's a couple of possibilities to this. One is that over the next 2 years, they simply wrap up the story and then that's that. And then it's just a question of coming up with a licensing agreement for Disney to get it back, whether, they pay Netflix to basically wholly own them or something along those lines, and then they'll leave with everything else. If Disney doesn't feel like footing that kind of bill, which they could certainly afford, but maybe they don't want to, they could continue to develop those properties on Netflix for as long as it is profitable for both companies to do so. But at least until we get a specific announcement about something changing there, those shows won't be leaving Netflix because, as I said, Disney doesn't own them wholly. But everything else is going to go. And my general feeling about that, well, it's funny, my feelings change slightly depending on the company doing it. So, for instance, CBS is putting out its own streaming service, and I hate that largely because they are holding the new Star Trek Discovery series to ransom behind a paywall. That show, though it is going to have its premiere on CBS proper, is going to have subsequent episodes exclusive to the service, which is BS because CBS does not have a back catalog of stuff that justifies signing up for a service just for their stuff. And basically holding a new series to ransom is utter crap. And I can't say that Disney's going to do that directly. I mean, we don't really know, but I think it's a fairly good shot to say that they will be making some things that will premiere and probably be exclusive to their streaming service, at least initially. Maybe something that they make for the streaming service will later air on Disney XD or ABC or whatever. But they probably will, in an attempt to do value-added stuff and make the service more profitable, have stuff that is made exclusively for it. Although I doubt it will be major ticket stuff that is going to be held to ransom the way the Star Trek property is being done by CBS. As I said, my opinion changes slightly because of who it is. I'm less ticked off at Disney because, as much as I don't like this move as a practice, because it's an anti-consumer move. There's no benefit to the consumer for this to happen, to have to go and sign up for different streaming services for each different owner of stuff that they like. That is not particularly convenient. That being said, the current model where stuff is on Netflix or Hulu or Amazon Prime or whatever for a couple of years and then potentially move somewhere else, that's not particularly consumer friendly either. So I'm not idealizing the system that we have right now, but the more services that get creative, the more annoying it becomes for the consumers. And I am an outsider looking in. I'm not part of the industry. I am a consumer. So on premise, I'm not a huge fan of this. That having been said, if there's one company whose backlog of material, plus the rate and the volume of new material they're creating, could actually justify paying a subscription service to get access to all of it at a moment's notice through streaming, honestly, it's Disney, because they have got going on 90 years worth of stuff that they've already produced: movies, shorts, television, live action. Realize that ESPN is owned by Disney, so that's a factor in this. They own ABC, they own Marvel, they own Star Wars. There's all the shows that they either have made in the past or are going to make in the future for things like Disney XD, ABC, all this stuff. So this is a massive amount of content, and there aren't all that many potential companies who could do something like this who would ever have the volume of content that Disney has that could rival that kind of lineup. Depending on what the price point is, it might actually be worth it in terms of how much stuff you're actually going to get access to. Does that mean I'm actually going to sign up for it? Probably not. I don't need another bill in my life. Aside from sort of my reflex on just the idea of more of these services being created and having to sign up for more and more things just to get what I want, for what they have control of, they can kind of justify it. I mean, not justify it in any sense that it's a benefit to the consumer. I mean, they're doing this to consolidate everything and get money directly, as opposed to only get money from licensing and then Netflix rakes it in. So obviously this is a completely self-serving move, but what they can offer you for the price is potentially a lot of stuff. What I'm much more afraid of is less Disney doing this themselves rather than all the bandwagon jumpers. Well, and I say bandwagon jumpers, Disney's not the first to really try and do this. As I mentioned, CBS already has a streaming, and you know, most of the premium cable channels have streaming, like HBO, Showtime, whatever, but they don't make shows exclusive to the streaming service. But it's a factor. So, you know, these companies having streaming just for their stuff, that's not new. But if Disney does it, other companies are going to follow suit. Now, if we are lucky, they will wait and see how well this works for Disney before they make any decisions. Unfortunately, what I think is more likely is the major competitors to Disney are going to see what they're doing and then try and get the ball rolling before they even know if this works, which means we're going to see all this content, you know, gutted out of services like Netflix, like Hulu, like Amazon Prime, leaving them as shells of what they once were. And as all these different companies start up their own thing. I mean, Warner Brothers, Time Warner, they could easily do it. Viacom could do it, and probably will if they haven't already decided to do so. Now, whether these things will work, I mean, from a business standpoint, maybe. It's hard to say. Here's one thing that I wish they would realize. This is really going to cause a spike in piracy. Because I'm not the first to point this out, but the best way you can combat piracy is to make the legal way to acquire something easier than the illegal way. So, like, the way that music piracy basically kind of went under, aside from, you know, taking Napster to court and all that other stuff, was ultimately iTunes. iTunes and Apple made it super easy just to click a button and get the thing you wanted. And that model and things like it have shown, and you know, things like Steam on for PC gaming and all that kind of stuff has shown that if you make it convenient and you're not gouging on the price, it's reasonably priced, people are willing to pay for the stuff if pirating is harder. However, when you keep subdividing content across all these multiple platforms, so the only way to get what you want legally is to sign up for like 5 different services, no, there's going to be a spike in piracy because it's not going to be notably less convenient to just go to torrents and do all this other stuff. I'm not advocating piracy. I I take a bit of a stance against it as a content creator and someone who wishes they could make a living doing this sort of stuff. I'm really kind of not okay with piracy, excepting the situations where you actually literally can't get something legally. I mean, there are cases where content hasn't been released in the US and things like that. I'm like, you know what? It's something you love. It's the only way you can get it, fine. But in terms of if you have the option to buy, opting to pirate it, I'm not in favor of that, but realistically, this is gonna spike. I mean, this, for God's sakes, this is what Nintendo is seeing with, it saw with the NES Classic and now the SNES Classic, where they did this really limited number of things, and people want them. Massive amounts of people want them, but because it's such a pain in the butt to get them, tons of people are just stocking up on little emulator devices that aren't the real thing and are of questionable legality. But they're gonna do it because you made it too much of a pain in the butt to get the real thing. And while, Disney making its own streaming services and other things like that is not exactly a one-to-one parallel with what Nintendo has done with these sorts of things, I think the core of what I'm saying holds true. The more inconvenient you make it to get things the legitimate way, the more piracy is going to thrive. So I don't know if they've taken that into account. I think what we're probably going to see, I think we're going to see the start of another cycle. Because I think in a lot of ways what happened, I don't know how long ago, a couple of decades or so. So just sort of going back, television originally was just network television. You had the major networks and you had like your local channel that you picked up on rabbit ears. So that was pretty much it. Then cable came along, and cable gave the opportunity for things to get more specialized. And so you had channels really focused on single genres, single, mentalities, or in the case of something like the Disney Channel or Nickelodeon, single demographics, a single brand worth of stuff. And that was okay, but then they kept getting more and more and more, and it kept subdividing, and it kind of got out of control with how many cable channels there were, and the way you had to buy these bundles. You couldn't just get the ones you wanted. And then something like Netflix came along, and once Netflix moved on past its just doing its discs and got into streaming, it really changed the whole game, because it's suddenly like, wait, I can just pay this one service and get all this stuff. Like, maybe it's not absolutely everything I wish I was watching, but this is a lot of stuff. This is more than enough. And you've seen a lot of people do, cut the cord. It became kind of a rallying cry for a bit there. So you had this thing where, first we had a wealth of options, but the options became inconvenient. I'm talking about cable with that. And then it got consolidated into something like Netflix and Hulu, and so there were a couple of services, but there weren't too many. Now we're seeing the subdividing again because people are getting greedy, and I think what'll probably happen is Disney will do this and it'll probably do okay, and then other companies will do it and it'll subdivide, and then they'll either start to become either less profitable because people are just gonna pay. Because here's the advantage of this over the old cable model, because cable, as I said, used to bundle channels together. So okay, well, you can get this one channel you really want, but you're gonna have to pay us $40 and it comes with these 30 other channels that you don't give a darn about. So having these streaming services for these companies does at least eliminate the bundling problem. So it will empower people to get just the stuff that they want. I mean, the thing is, though, people aren't as brand loyal as these companies hope. No one's going to get Disney and go, well, I am all set for my entertainment needs forever. I need nothing else, because look, I love Disney, especially if I'm taking into account Marvel and Star Wars and everything else. They put out a lot of stuff that I love, but I need more than that in my life. So, people are going to pick and choose, and with the ability to pick and choose, whoever has the least number of really valuable, enticing options, they're going to slant downhill. And then eventually, whichever ones aren't doing as well as they want, they're gonna go crawling back to Netflix or Hulu or whoever's left, depending on how those companies fare as this stuff gets ripped away. And things are gonna get reconsolidated again, and then that will be actually more consumer friendly. And I think it's just gonna keep cycling, because what is happening is the consumer friendly option becomes available and happens, and consumers flock to it. And then corporations think, okay, but how can we make this more profitable? And they kneecap the consumer-friendly option. And then we're stuck with whatever that is until a newer consumer-friendly option comes around, and we all flock to that again. So it's just annoying at this point. And as I said, I'm not as annoyed with Disney. I'm kind of just Disney, but it's the idea that I think this is really going to cause a snowball effect with all this sort of stuff. So yeah, I don't have a bigger overall conclusion to all this. Like I said, this isn't even the sort of stuff I normally talk about, and I might never bring it up again. Maybe you don't care my thoughts on this, but if you got here to the end, what are your thoughts on it? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, check me out on Twitter at Council of Geeks. Give a listen to the Council of Geeks podcast, available on iTunes and Stitcher. I'm also one half of the Punch Like a Girl podcast, also available on iTunes and Stitcher. And until next time, this council is adjourned.